Hi, we're going to discuss making the paint thicker, making Matisse acrylics really thick or quite thick, depending on what it is that you want to do with them. So hopefully you have a card just like this without this stuff on the bottom. And as this video is playing and I'm talking to you about the various different mediums, what it'd be great for you to do is, maybe not as neatly as this because I never am, this is definitely not my work, put a little bit of each medium by itself without any paint on one side and then mix it with a little bit of paint. You should have some Matisse structure there, and mix it with the paint. You can use the same all the way along. In fact, this looks nice because it's different, but I'd actually use the same all the way along, and that way you can see the difference between each one of the mediums. So if you complete this, I'll start talking about the mediums. So what we are trying to do is get a relief effect or a 3D effect with the acrylics. And there might be various reasons for doing this, and there are various different ways of doing this. For more than 50 years, we've been making two mediums that will make the paint thick: impasto medium and gel medium. The main difference between these two mediums, because in the jar they look very similar, but the main difference is the impasto medium you can add paint to, or indeed you can paint over the top of it. The gel medium, you tend to add the paint to it and use it to get a 3D glaze. You will notice that all these thickening mediums or building mediums look milky, or in fact they look white. That whiteness, for the most part, especially with the gel medium, will go away over time as the water evaporates out, but with the impasto medium, not as much. It will remain translucent, and that isn't just the difference in refractive light index between water and the acrylic, but also with the other materials that are used to formulate the impasto medium and give it that open matrix. Okay, so we'll back up a little bit and we'll talk about how the impasto works. Acrylic paints, and especially varnishes for instance, should not be put on or applied too thickly in one go. Because of the way they dry, the water evaporates out of the top, out of the surface, and water can get trapped underneath in extreme circumstances. Enter impasto medium. Impasto medium is formulated such that it has an open matrix, more open than the paint. And so that allows you to build up really quite thick applications in one go, much thicker than you would normally do with the paint. Now, as I say with the impasto, you can add paint to it or paint over the top of it, depends on your technique. Either way is fine, but you'll find that the impasto medium is cheaper than the paint, so if you can just paint over the top, if your technique allows that, it's probably a cheaper way to go. The gel medium will dry with a really high gloss. The impasto has a little bit of sheen to it, probably a satin by itself. The paint will change that a little bit. But the gel medium dries to quite a high gloss and can actually look like the paint is still wet. Now the difference between the two, as I say, the impasto is translucent versus the gel medium that's clear. So if you want to do glazes, three-dimensional glazes, the gel medium is the medium of choice. Now you'll notice I've only talked about the impasto medium and the gel medium, but there are other mediums here. So we have a matte gel medium, which is just that. It's a matte version of our gel medium. Keep in mind the gel medium dries completely clear. The matte gel medium does not completely clear, because the matting agent in it will give it a slight haziness. However, the super heavy gel medium will dry completely clear, and it's just a more dense, higher building, clear gel medium, just like its cousin the MM4. And the light modelling paste, much more like the impasto medium, certainly won't dry clear, is quite light when you feel it with some of the other mediums, but will build with a really high texture. So the light modelling paste has microspheres in it. They are tiny, tiny little hollow glass beads which make it light but give it some real body and some texture, but therefore won't dry quite as smooth as the impasto medium. Of course, you can lay down a really thick layer of the light modelling paste, leave it to dry, and then a coat of the impasto medium over the top to get a very smooth finish, if that's what you're after. So all of the mediums we've just discussed, you can mix with the paint or you can paint over the top of, but they are basically all binder or have a very high content of binder. The straight gel medium and the super heavy gel medium are basically just binders. They're really strong glues. So you can use them to adhere other things to other things. And for instance, for collage or mixed media, using the matte gel medium can work really well because it's a matte sheen. If it protrudes from underneath something, it'll tend not to sort of glow and shine and let people know that there's some glue there. It'll tend to fade into the background because it's matte. So as well as building up texture of your paintings, pretty well any one of these mediums can be used for mixed media and adhering all sorts of found objects to your canvas. And I've left this medium to last, acrylic thickener, MM38. And the reason being that this works quite differently to these guys. All the mediums, the 5 mediums we've talked about, the builders, will just through the sheer beefiness of their own structure increase the body of paint that you're working with. On the other hand, the acrylic thickener will chemically thicken the paint. So it's actually one of the thickeners that we use to adjust the viscosity of the paint. So you only need a small amount, 3 to 5% max, and you need to stir it in really, really well into the paint until it becomes homogeneous, until it's the same thickness all the way through. Don't add too much or the paint is going to go quite dry and almost solid. So just to wrap up, all of these mediums can be used on any surface that an acrylic will stick to. So that's glass or cardboard or wood, glass or anything non-porous, just make sure it's well cleaned beforehand. Porous materials like terracotta or raw wood, as you'll know, clear sealer beforehand and a gesso. All of these mediums will wash up in water. Just make sure you get to them before they dry because they will become very hard to get out. When they do dry, especially in brushes, you will want to use the brush restorer if you leave them to dry. What paint would you use with these mediums? It just makes sense to use structure. A thick, full-bodied acrylic with each one of the mediums will help to keep it thick. If you happen to have some flow and you want to use it, or even fluids for that matter, it's not a problem. They're compatible, but obviously you're starting to thin the viscosity down a little bit, which is kind of counterproductive to what we're trying to do.